event, but I was sitting, all I wanted when I was done was to sit at an office desk and dress businessy. And I don't even think I worked at the law firm for a year. And I was like, oh my God, I can't sit still. Like, how do people do this? This is not, I think it's motivation at the top, then action, then results. And I say you have to flip it. So you have to take action first to then get some results, and then you will get motivation. And then it's like pushing a boulder up a hill, and once it's over the hill, then it's easy.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the ADHD Eavesdrop, where you can be a butterfly on the wall and listen in on my conversations. And who am I? I'm Janine Van Stee. I'm an ADHD life coach who likes to help people better manage their symptoms and live their best lives. Today on the show, we have Dr. Saara Haapanen. Dr. Saara is on a mission to guide others through mindset shifts for sustainable lifestyle changes to live happier, healthier lives. Her current focus is empowering individuals with ADHD to harness their unique superpowers. With 26 years of coaching experience and a background as an international elite athlete and Olympic alternate, Dr. Saara is a seasoned expert in helping individuals live happier, healthier lives. Armed with degrees in kinesiology and health promotion and sports and exercise psychology, she's an internationally published research in optimal human performance and motivation, featured in Forbes Health, Shape, and more. As the creator of MoveAtWorkChallenge.com, she leads hundreds of humans daily in movement and mental training sessions. She is also the CEO of Performance is Happening, a boutique performance consulting firm that creates cultures of wellness to unlock optimal performance. Hi, Saara. It is so wonderful to meet you. Welcome to the show today. I appreciate you being on, and I'm really excited to have you. We were talking a little bit before about, exercise and how I love the exercise aspect of trying to manage ADHD and a lot of other parts of our lives. So tell me a little bit about what you do as Dr. Saara.
Oh, I do. Well, as someone with ADHD, I definitely do a lot. And I didn't know, I'm sure we'll get into the diagnosis story later, but so my undergrad is in kinesiology and health promotion. And long story short, I thought I would just be working with elite athletes. That was my dream. I was a high level athlete myself. I actually found out 12 days before the Olympics I wasn't going. I was ranked 30th. They were supposed to take 34 and they took 29. So I was actually the first person not to go. But not knowing I had ADHD, I was just interested in things that I was interested in. And at that point, it was kinesiology. And I was blessed to be able to take a graduate level sports psychology class my last year of college. And I absolutely fell in love. And one of the reasons I think I did was because it was so relevant to me, especially, so my sport, I was a diver. That's a lot of, okay, in my opinion, I think 90% of divers have ADHD because first it's like adrenaline seeking and it's all you in your head and you have to basically like tell your brain's like, don't do that. That's scary. Like if you're walking down the board, jumping backwards, jumping outwards, flipping backwards, but we're like, we love that stimulation. And I really loved what was relevant to me at that time and fell in love with sports psychology, and then was blessed to be able to move to Finland to train for the Olympics. And I did my master's there in sports and exercise psychology, and then started my PhD there. And then we moved back to the United States. And what happened is I was pretty depressed. So when I first moved here, I was working in a law firm for a year, and this story will become relevant, but I was sitting, all I wanted when I was done was to sit at an office desk and dress businessy. And I don't even think I worked at the law firm for a year. And I was like, oh my God, I can't sit still. Like, how do people do this? This is still not knowing I had ADHD. So then in that point, years later, but it was imprinted in my brain that I'm going to create a program called Move at Work Challenge, where it helps people who have to sit at a desk all day. But what happened is during my time at the law firm, I found out I got a research grant. So then I could quit my job. And that was literally 2 weeks before I was going to Hawaii to get married. And so it was great. Like I left the law firm and went to Hawaii and like never went back to a desk job like that. And then really dug into my research. And I'm so lucky that I got funding to do research, and we did high level athletes in 3 countries, and it was so cool. But I didn't like data analysis. I didn't like really anything academia except for actually talking to the athletes and doing the research and like studying about motivation. So it's actually funny because I'm going to go down lots of rabbit holes. I was medicated earlier today, but I just took my patch off. So don't worry, I'll come back.
Rabbit holes is what this is all about. We love rabbit holes on this show.
Yeah, for sure. But I always knew I wasn't motivated the same way as other people. So my research is a motivation. I did a master's thesis in motivation, and there's lots of variables I measured, including emotional regulation as part of my PhD work, but I studied motivation, not knowing I had ADHD. So what happened is I was doing the stupid research that I hated, like data analysis and stuff, and I got really depressed. And my husband said, why don't you go back to training like you did in college? You seem to really like that. So I was doing that part-time, and I fell back in love with training, like helping people change their lives. But I always thought I only wanted to work with elite athletes. But the thing is, when you're working with an elite athlete, you're part of the team. So you're part of the team that makes them jump a millimeter higher or make them faster, but it's not life-changing. For the athlete in the moment, it is, but it's not like long-term life-changing when you're doing sports psychology. I mean, a lot of those things are life transferable skills. But when I went back to training, because I was depressed, I got back into like actually changing humans' lives. And then that was like a drug for me. So I've never looked back. So I started my company in 2013. Health and wellness, personal training. We have a corporate side. We've expanded now to we do leadership development and communications. My research is based in performance science. So basically we take performance science from athletics and apply it to business settings, to corporations and companies. And then part of the corporate side of it, I created a program called Move at Work Challenge, which has now been in the Denver Public School District for 7 years. What it is it's 5 to 7 minutes of movement that you do at your place of work. So you don't need any equipment. On Wednesdays, we do mental health training. So we do like stress reduction, anxiety, I give people tools for their toolbox so that when real life happens, they have tools. But it's so cool because I've never done the same workout twice. I film videos everywhere. I've done them on airplanes and libraries, in front of the Statue of Liberty, the Golden Gate Bridge, all over the world. And I was like pulling out my selfie stick and doing it like 7 years ago before it was cool, like way before COVID. But then fast forward, I am a procrastinator, as all ADHDers were. And apparently you can't be a PhD student for 10 years. So I was up on year 9 and got a little frustrated because the whole academia, like you do a lot of work and people take it from you and present it as their own. That's like how it works. They have these little worker bees that do the work and the supervisors put their name on it. And I wasn't a fan of that. So I kind of quit for a while. I had already been published, and the thing about academia is basically you have to write it as confusing as you can using big words. So even if what I was studying was really cool. So it was how the coach creates climates of success, and how that leads to optimal motivation and optimal human performance. We use a psychobiosocial model. You can ask me questions. I can get into that.
Yeah, but I actually took a few minutes to look at it earlier. Interesting. Yeah. It was very interesting.
Yeah. But it's just ridiculous, like the way that academia works. And you're finding out really cool things, but it never gets out to the athletes or the practitioners or the coaches. Like you just present your research to other researchers. And even if you want to access these journals, like you need to be part of a university. So I didn't love that. And I had a year left. and I went to go read my work and I couldn't understand. Like the words went in, but it wasn't cognitively firing in my brain. So I got really worried and scared. And I got a brain scan, 2 brain scans, actually. They do a regular one, and then they have you do a really boring task on an iPad, and they inject radioactive dye into you, and then they scan your brain again. And they're like, no, you just have ADHD. They're like, your brain literally, you have no blood flow in the frontal lobe when you're doing a boring task. And I was like, so much sense. I'm not broken. Like, this is why I don't give a shit about this. That's why it's not going into my brain. At that point, I had moved on and was living my dream, like helping people. And the research didn't really mean anything besides I wanted the piece of paper that said I had a PhD. Like, I did put a lot of work into it. When I was in it, it was relevant to me, so I cared. But knowing everyone's like, what are you going to do with your PhD? And I'm like, charge more. Like, it didn't matter for me at that point. But when I got my diagnosis, then I hyper focused, and I've been hyper focused on ADHD and realizing, like, yes, I have a background in motivation. Yes, these things work for most people, but here's how it's different for ADHD people. Here's what we need. Here's why all this stuff didn't work. Here's why our brain works differently. So that's how I kind of got into it. And so I still do corporate wellness. My wellness corporate side of my business is wellness, performance, and neurodivergence. And then with individuals, I do health coaching, personal training. I'm actually full for personal training. And then ADHD, like calming the chaos, feeling like a human, getting your energy back, mind management. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of things. And at one point I did have a sunglass company that I closed down because it wasn't changing lives. Like, people are like, why'd you close I was like, it's the same to sell a pair of sunglasses online that it is coaching or helping or fitness or workout membership. And it actually means something. Like, now people, if they work with me, I send them a pair of sunglasses, but I didn't need another thing.
Absolutely. But, it's so ADHD like to have so many things going on. And it's great that you were able to let something go, because sometimes it's really hard to let something go. On the other hand, sometimes you just let things go and forget they even existed. So,
oh my gosh. Yeah, I just actually posted a video of this. I saw a shirt that I really liked. It's Sierra Trading Post, and it was on clearance for $10. So I bought it, and then I went out of town, and I just saw it in a pile of clothes, and I was like, oh, this shirt's so cute. And it still had a tag on it, thank goodness. Because I'm going through my closet and I have exactly the same shirt right there. I was like, that's why I liked it. So I bought it again. So I returned it. And then I was reflecting. I do this with digital products all the time. Like, I'll recreate an ebook that I've already created, or I'll start doing a program that I already have. So one of my goals is to like look at all the stuff that I have to just remind us, because if it's not like emotionally linked, like if it's just a mundane task, our brains are like, okay, next, like we don't take it in. So
no, not at all. I mean, it's like, oh, it's not now. That's the whole thing. It's not now right now. So
yeah,
there's so many things that intrigue me about the idea of motivation and exercise, because so many people want to be able to exercise. They know it's good for them. They know that it, is going to make them feel good, stronger, and all those things. But being motivated to do it is really tough. Do you work with people on how to get motivated to get back to that activity?
Yeah. I mean, I get asked that all the time. And so there's a few things. Transitioning tasks is really challenging for our ADHD brain. There's also this idea of your future self. So I was just meeting with a client this morning, and she said, I know I feel better on days I work out. I know I need to get started. And what I always tell people is like, we kind of have to think of moving our bodies. First, I think this is really helpful to switch the word in your brain of exercise, because a lot of us have a lot of negative connotation with that. So I always say, aim for movement. Like, every day you're going to get movement. This is going to be like brushing our teeth. We're going to have to do this our whole life. Some days will be easier. Some days will not be easier. Making decisions for our future self is huge. And then keeping promises with ourselves. Because as ADHDers or neurotypicals, often it's very challenging to follow through on what we say we're going to do, but we'll do it for somebody else. So a lot of people hire me because they're accountable to me. And I mean, I've been working with them online. It's not like there's nothing really I can do, but we go a lot deeper into like, how can we make this fun? And that's why I have my program is 5 to 7 minutes. So I usually have people start there because 5 minutes should be enough in your head that's long enough. You're not going to give yourself excuses. Like if you don't have 5 minutes, and as I said earlier, like the starting is the hardest part. And so, and I'd be happy to share with you, I do this thing. It's called Class Pass. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
So you pay a monthly membership and you get credits. And one of the reasons I like it is I get bored easily because I have ADHD, but I also use it as research. But the nice thing is it's all over the United States. I think they have it in Canada too. So I always encourage people to keep moving, to keep trying to find something that's fun, that's joyful, or maybe you're just looking for something that's less shitty. Like, so I love exercise. I need it as my therapy. My body feels better when I move. And I also have people reflect on when you do move, like what feels better, because it's scientifically proven 20 minutes of exercise is as effective, if not more, than antidepressants and anti-anxiety medicine, right? And when my ADHDers are challenged, I always have them ask 4 things. Did you move your body? Did you sleep? How did you eat? And what's your mindset like, And then once you check in with all those 4 things and you can do those 4 things, then we can complain and like find answers, or you can try other things, but those 4 things. But when I do a presentation, I usually show the wheel. So the only time motivation starts a behavior like doing exercise, especially if you're not going to get dopamine right away, is January 1st. And that lasts 9 days for 90% of the people. So what I tell people, like they think it's motivation at the top, then action, then results. And I say you have to flip it. So you have to take action first to then get some results. So that could be 20 minutes of walking. And then you will get motivation. And then it's like pushing a boulder up a hill. And once it's over the hill, then it's easy. But everyone's like, I'm waiting until I have time. I'm waiting until I feel the motivation. Like you can't wait. You have to start taking action to then feel the motivation and then work with momentum. And a big part of it is like, what are you telling yourself? Do you believe exercise is easy? Do you believe it's hard? Does it feel like a task for you? Like, do you hate it? Like, think about the language you use with yourself, because that matters so much more for your brain than anything else.
I talk a lot with clients about that negative self-talk that you get going in there, because it doesn't matter whether somebody else is saying it or you're saying it to yourself. You're still hearing it, right? It's still going in there. And being able to use kind language with ourselves is really difficult for a lot of people with ADHD.
For sure. I always have people, I'm like, talk to yourself like your own best friend. Would you ever utter these words out to another human being? Most of us are like, oh, we're not doing that. But we're so mean to ourselves, and we hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. But, on the opposite side of the, not wanting to do the exercise and negative self-talk that goes along with it sometimes, it doesn't matter what the activity is, as long as you're moving your body. And even though you may be saying some negative things to yourself when you're doing it, I don't know anybody who says, well, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Yeah. Because there's automatic, whether you like doing the exercise or not, the dopamine is going in, right? It's released, and you don't have to enjoy the activity to get dopamine. And that's one of the few things in our lives where we can get a sure hit of dopamine.
Yeah. And I mean, like, humans are not meant to sit on our butts all day. We weren't, computers weren't around, office desks weren't around. We were hunter and gatherers, and especially ADHDers were the hunters and gatherers. Like, we are meant to move. We're meant to like look and find new things,
Absolutely. But when you deal with clients, what is like an overarching thing that you run into a lot with people?
I mean, there are so many things. Mm-hmm. It's like the typical, A lot of people recently are, I would say, like perimenopausal or menopausal. And so what happens is, as we know, like dopamine is the motivation neurotransmitter. And when you're approaching that time of your life, your estrogen drops, and estrogen is linked with dopamine. So all these people who haven't really had they've been managing just fine. And all of a sudden they're like, what is going on? And along with other things, like you get the menopause belly. So you tend to hold more, which it could be menopause belly, and it could also be cortisol. So when your stress level is really high all the time, your body is basically looking to fight, flight, freeze. Now they have fawn, and fawn is existent in our world, but like traditionally, your body is getting ready to prepare for something. So that means everything else gets put on the back burner. So like processing food properly, like your micronutrients, like your eyes get big, all the blood flow goes out of your extremities, like your body's getting ready to fight or run away or like play dead. And when we're in a consistent state of dysregulation like that, then the side effects are you're exhausted, you've gained weight, everything feels really hard. So
You're describing me about 2 years ago.
yeah. So my big thing when I start with people, and it depends. So it depends if it's like just coaching where I'm seeing them online or if they're coming to see me in the gym. But with most of the time, it's mindset, what I start with first, and like, how do you make this fun? And my big thing is there are no rules to life. So you might feel like you need to do it somebody else's way, but let's figure out what's working, what's going to work for you, and what's going to be fun and what's going to be sustainable. And like I often also have them future cast a lot. So like, what do you want? We're going to make a lot of decisions now that are going to be hard, but for your future self, and how we break that down into 1% changes. But yeah, you see a lot of people that think it's going to be harder than it's going to be. And I'm like, what do you believe? If you believe this is going to be hard, then gosh darn it, it's going to be hard. But what if it were easy? Like, what if it could be easy? What if you could like working out and it could be fun and you're eating healthy and your life is changing and it just has to be 1% better choices? Then a year from now, you're not going to recognize yourself. And I've seen that with so many of my clients, but we have that light switch brain. It's on or it's off. I'm on the wagon. I'm off the wagon. I'm like, look, there's no wagon. This is life. There's today, there's tomorrow. And I often hear about like people throw their goals out the door on the weekend, and they're like, well, I'm just going to eat crappy the whole weekend and I'll start again on Monday. And it's like, no, but the next meal, like the next moment you can start. There's no starting again. This is just life. Like there's no wagon. Like you're also allowed to do whatever you want to do. And just changing that mindset of like good food, bad food. And it's like, you want to make more healthy choices most of the time. And I'm never, ever going to tell. And even with myself, I'm never going to tell you can't eat something. If you really like to have a piece of chocolate cake with whatever icing, like have that, just don't eat the whole cake. And with our brains, I think a really great tip for people is like that first taste, that first like sugar, how sugar is like cocaine for brains. Like, you get that high and you're never going to get after that first bite, like you're never going to get that high again. And I know with ADHDers, we do that a lot with drinking. Like you'll have a beer or two or whatever you're drinking and you're like, ooh, I love this. So let's have more. But what our brains are smart, and our brains actually release a chemical that lowers the dopamine because they know you got it unnaturally. They're like, that doesn't happen naturally in real life. Like you can go for a run and get some dopamine, but it's still not as quick as like a drug or a piece of cake or like alcohol. So just helping people become aware of like what's going on in our brain. And once you realize like you're chasing a high that you're not going to get, then it's way easier to be like, oh, I'm just going to have a drink tonight or 2 drinks tonight. And I don't have to have all the drinks tonight because, you know, you're never going to get there, that high that you first got after drink 2 or 1. So,
right. Yeah. And dopamine chasing is a very definite ADHD pastime. So you're talking about when you got diagnosed, they did all the brain scans and everything, and that was in like around 2020, right?
Yeah.
So that's how you found out you had ADHD. What happened after you figured it out? What did did you go through after you figured that out?
My research brain went into, I have to learn every single thing about this.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people go through a grieving period. That didn't really happen for me because I think I've been studying performance for so long and like how to perform and how to show up and how to regulate emotion and all that. So I had a lot of the skills. What was really frustrating for me is everything that I thought was special and unique about my personality was an ADHD thing. And that really pissed me off because I thought I was like, I grew up in Canada. I got a scholarship to the United States. And in that moment, I decided, now I look back and I know like I'm unmasking. I was like, I'm going to go to college. This is the best. And I know this because I studied psychology, but like changing your environment is the easiest way to make any changes because you're in a new space and your brain, like it's then more like malleable to make changes. But I decided like when I go to college, I'm going to be my outgoing myself. I'm just going to be myself. Like I'll make new friends. None of these people know me. I could be whoever I want. Realizing like I was going to be a weirdo, but now realizing I wasn't going to go with the people pleasing Matt. I still had people pleasing in a different way, but like I was very quiet in high school and like I got along with everybody. Like I got to hang out with popular kids and my best friend, but I was very like I went to college and I'm like, I'm going to do all this. So I was very like proud of my weirdo-ness and all these like unique things I would do. And as I learned more, I'm like, oh, that's ADHD. Oh, that's ADHD. Oh, that's not. People are like, yeah, but you're still you just have ADHD. But I think that was more interesting or different than because I was always a high performer and I was always chasing a very specific goal, which was diving and going to the Olympics. And once that didn't happen, it was interesting. Like when I retired at 28 or however old I was, like I thought, because I don't have my sport, I'm gonna have all this extra time to do all this stuff. That's how it happens. Like life happens and you still go to school and you're still like, but I needed something to be like, it made sense that my brain did all these things. Like I didn't talk about it earlier, but like I had a digital media agency in 2018 for 2 years, maybe like 2016, 2018, that like just happened by accident because I knew how to build websites and it was easy to get popular online then. And like one person would tell another person, and then I had hire people, and then I was all of a sudden like, people are like, how do you do this? And I was like, well, if I give a shit, then I can learn. And I knew I could learn. I just had to care. And people are like, how do you know how to, like I renovated, this whole house has almost been renovated, but like I can cut tile, install toilets. People are like, how do you learn? I'm like, I watch YouTube. I know I'm smart. If I care, I can do it. Now I know that's an ADHD trait, but yeah. So then I finished my PhD. I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. So I went down that rabbit hole, really changed my whole life. Went back to my doctor a year later and she's like, what the heck did you, she told me I had to be on a pill for the rest of my life. And I was like, I don't do meds. So I was like, well, I would be a hypocrite. Like I teach people how to change their lives. I have all this research. She didn't know any of it. So I made changes. Like I don't eat dairy, don't eat gluten. I gave up alcohol for a year, reduced toxins, like supplemented, and anything above 7 is autoimmune. And when I got tested, I had 1,256 and I went back in a year and it was 134. And she's like, what did you do? And I said, well, I learned about it and I like made the lifestyle changes. She's like, no, like, but how do you make the lifestyle changes? I was like, this is what I help people with. So I know how to do that. I was like, it's a long story, but you basically like make changes every day and like keep promises and do what you're gonna do. So then for a while I was like, oh, I'm going to help ADHDers with Hashimoto's. And I did that for a while. And then,
there's a correlation, not necessarily causation, but it's a high comorbidity for
sure.
Hashimoto's. I also have Hashimoto's.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with the consistent, like dysregulated nervous system, having to mask all the time to like fit in with society. Then a lot of people also have like the people pleasing and you want to fit in this box that is what other people say you should be. And like being perfect. Like I loved school. So I was going to win at school. Whatever I was doing that I cared, like I had to be the best. So that like go, 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 go. And even not being able to rest. And now I can rest and I teach people about meditation, but it took me a really long time to be able to figure that out. And then maybe like 2 years ago, a little while later, I got diagnosed again because I wanted to try meds. So then I had a psychiatric nurse practitioner diagnose me with combined. And I was like, oh, I have all of it. Yes. But it made a lot of sense because I had inattentive always in my head. And then I have to move. I am a mover. So I
That's
feel like,
why I have to sit here with a fidget the whole time we're
yeah, I've got this cool ring
yeah,
that's,
my body.
yeah. And then I'm always on the bracelets or like touching stuff or,
You know,
um,
girls don't oftentimes it's less common for girls to have the hyperactivity component. Um, at least that's what research says right now. But in a lot of it shows in talking. But I too am hyperactive, have hyperactivity. And I look back now once I found that out and been like, okay, because that's why people wouldn't sit next to me at a conference because I couldn't sit still, right? It's like, I
yeah,
love you to death, but you move too much, right? And I thought that was a personality flaw. Just control your body, right? And it's not that easy.
yeah, no, yeah. Just focus more.
Yeah,
Control your body.
look
Yeah,
harder,
that's
look
stuff.
harder.
Yeah. Yeah. Pay attention. I'm like,
Yes.
I am paying. Well, I want to do something when I'm paying attention. Like I'll color or and now that I know I have ADHD, but I remember being younger and they're like, why aren't you paying attention to me? I was like, I'm listening. If you want me to listen, I have to be moving, coloring or doodling. And it's interesting because,
Well, and
as you
since my
know,
diagnosis and since we've figured out a lot of stuff with it, my husband got diagnosed right around the same time I did. As it turns out, my whole family has ADHD, including my 80-year-old mother who got diagnosed at 79. So, but it was really interesting to be able to understand those things about each other. And it changed a lot as far as those perceptions went. And once we figured that out, now my husband knows that when he starts talking to me and I grab my sketch pad and start sketching, it's because I'm listening, not because I'm ignoring,
yeah.
which is just really interesting to be like, yeah, I have to do this so I can really hear you.
Yeah. It's like you get eye contact and it looks like I'm listening and nothing is going in there. And now you're like smiling. And I'm like, is this okay? Yeah. If I could like move my body right now, I would be able to take in the
Right.
information
Can we
better.
talk while I do jumping jacks, please?
Yeah. 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 I was just visiting my family last week and I say to my mom and she goes, I don't have that. I'm like, well, mom, it's genetic. So you have it or dad has it. I don't necessarily see it so much my dad. I was like, well, mom, you know how you like have to do it all the time? And she's like literally telling me this as she's in a hammock swing. And I was like, you know how you need your movement? And I was like, it doesn't have to be like physical movement, but sometimes if you want our brain to calm down, like just in a rocking chair. On my back porch, I have a teak rocking chair. I have like the Costco rocking camping chair, and then I have one of the hammock rocking chairs, and then I have a lay down hammock because I feel calmer when my body is in motion. So it doesn't also, I have an acronym I teach people about motivating ADHDers, but movement is part of it, but it doesn't need to be, yes, exercise is great, movement, that kind of movement, but to have your body moving. I have a vibration platform. It's pretty big. I usually have it in my gym, but when I had to finish my PhD and I had a deadline, it had pre-set like 10-15 minute programs. So I would sit here at the desk and it'd be under the desk and I could like sit and write because I didn't try meds until after it was all done. But that was a really beneficial, like if my body was moving, my brain could shut up. I was talking with a client this morning, it was funny in the gym, and we were just saying how when people give us verbal directions, because it's like, okay, they'll be like, go straight and turn right. And then they keep talking. And in my brain, I'm repeating, go straight, turn right, go straight, turn right. And they're still talking. And I hope, like, if my husband's there, that he's listening. And usually he knows that he's listening. And he's like, okay, well, where do we go? And I was like, okay, so I got the go straight and turn right. And I was like, nothing else. It's like you were listening, especially when it's a stranger. I'm just like, like if I can write it down, I will. But often you can't. And you're asking for
Well,
directions. Literally, I'll be like, okay, so they go straight, and you don't want them to see you if you're going to turn right or left because I don't remember what they said. So I'm like, okay, they said go this way. It's just,
that's funny because there another comorbidity with the ADHD is auditory processing disorder, which I'm starting to think that I But I can't process, that those types of things auditorily. I have to write it down, or I'm not going to remember it. And I'll stop people. I'll be like, I don't want you to waste your time. We've got to write this down.
Yeah. Well, I reflect in college, I took so many notes. Like, I remember even studying for a test, I would take what's in the textbook and write it out. And I remember people being like, that's like so much work, just highlight it. And I was like, highlighting does nothing. I have to write it out or it makes no sense in my brain.
Absolutely. Well, believe it or not, we have been talking for a while and we've had a great conversation. I always have one last question for my guests before we go, and it's not always the same. So my question for you today is, if you could give one piece of wisdom that would help people view exercise in a not negative way, what would that be?
Can I give you two things?
Sure.
The first one would be, it could be fun. And it can be easy and it can be enjoyable. And you might just not have tried the right type of exercise. Mm-hmm. And if you put on your favorite music and dance around your living room, that counts as exercise.
Movement, yes.
Any sort of movement. And then the second thing is, so I created an acronym called FUNK MS. And this is how you can motivate yourself as an ADHDer to do anything, but it also works for exercise. So the first one is fun. F stands for fun. U is urgency. N is novel or newness. Funk. C, challenge, competition. Movement was the M, and then social. So as I mentioned earlier, often it's hard for us to show up for ourselves. But if you can show up for somebody else, like meet someone for a walk around the park, meet someone at the gym, ask your friend if they want to try a new video or workout with you. But you don't have to do this alone. We're not meant to be on the planet by ourselves. And use your community, use a coach. But it does start in the mind of saying, this could be easy, this could be fun. Maybe you just haven't found your movement yet. Like Pilates reformers, if you've never tried that, you can get your butt kicked on there, and it's actually pretty interesting. There's different studios and they'll do music blaring and rave lights or quiet, but there's so many things out there. You just maybe haven't found the right one yet. So you got to keep trying.
Wow, that just cued a whole bunch of stuff for me, because I did a podcast here not too long ago talking about how workout partners are such a huge I have a workout partner. It makes it so much more fun, so much easier. And there are other ways to do that, like by Zoom or whatever. You don't have to be in the same room with a friend to be able to work out with them, right? They can be working out in their house and you can be working out in yours and be on Zoom together. So there's lots of ways around that. So I just really want to say you resonated so much with me today, and I really, really enjoyed listening to you tell us about all the things that you do. And you are obviously very knowledgeable in your field, and I just really appreciated our conversation.
Oh, awesome. That was so much fun. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And so for our butterflies on the wall, if they like what they hear, we want to make sure that they subscribe and follow and do all those fun things. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time.